Welcome back. So this is part 2 of chapter 7, where we're looking at developing your philosophy as teaching. So for this part, we're going to be trying to look at how is it that students learn? And it's also important to know why that's important. So what are learning theories? Learning theories are formal ideas, tested hypotheses about how students learn. Now, why is that important to us? Well, as teachers, once we understand how our students learn best, based upon where they are developmentally, we're in a better position to know how to teach them. This is why kindergarten teachers use very different strategies than high school teachers, because students learn differently at different ages. So, I like this quote down below. If a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach them the way they learn. And I think that's a really good way of looking at teaching and learning. So how do students learn? We're going to be looking at a variety of different schools of thought on learning, starting with John Dewey. So John Dewey is a very well-respected visionary in the field of education. He came up with a lot of our early ideas on learning. You might recall him from our chapter on history in schools and how he was viewed as having progressive ideas about education. He wrote The School and Society, Experience in Education, very big books within the field. So what did he believe? He believed that children should work together to solve problems. And that through group work, through collaboration and interaction, they could engage in higher level thinking. I like this quote down here of his: education is not about telling and being told, but it's where students need to be active in constructing their own ideas. So what else? He also believed that teachers should actually use that scientific method while teaching lessons to help students learn. So that idea of posing a hypothesis, testing it, looking at the results, that you can use that process for learning in the classroom. And he also believed that teachers should be focusing on teaching our students how to think, more than focusing so much on what they should be thinking about. So rather than focusing so much on your content, to focus a little bit more on how thinking occurs. I thought this meme was relevant. What if I told you government schooling is meant to make you an obedient worker? That is actually a belief that John Dewey and his followers had. They did not like the traditional schooling system because they felt that it was about teaching people to be docile and obedient for the industrial nation. And again, that's just one point of view. So another famous researcher in the field of looking at learning theories is B.F. Skinner. You might recall B.F. Skinner if you've taken an intro to psychology class. He's a very famous behaviorist, studied the field of operant conditioning. He believed that learning is in reaction to stimuli in our environment. And more specifically, those stimuli are rewards and punishments. And to him, it is through rewards and punishments provided to us by other people that we learn. That's how learning occurs. Here's a short video just to kind of give you a bit of a feel for the behaviorists, particularly B.F. Skinner.
Skinner was a behaviorist.
Tori will show you how to put them in there.
He didn't believe in development unfolding in ages and stages. He believed that all behavior is learned through the consequences of our own actions.
Okay, now put them in there for me at the end. Try the other one. That's it. Very good.
We repeat behavior when we receive reinforcement for it. We avoid behavior when there is no reinforcement.
Very good, Corey. Very good. Return it, huh?
When adults use rewards, even just simple ones as praise, they show they are influenced by behavioristic principles.
There you go. Good job. Very good job.
And in a nutshell, this is a lot of what B.F. Skinner's theory was about. The idea that learning can be promoted when we provide the right kinds of rewards to our students. I thought this clip below might ring a bell with some of you. If you're a fan of Big Bang Theory, you might recall when Sheldon was trying to reinforce Penny for being quiet. And whenever she was quiet, he would give her chocolate. It's the same kind of thing. It's all about finding the right kind of reward for the students. Okay. I absolutely love that video. So it really shows, in essence, what operant conditioning or behaviorism is about. So the cats learn if they ring the bell, what happens? They get a treat. So what do they keep doing over and over? You're right, ringing the bell. So reinforcement is that idea. If you reinforce a behavior, and if they like the reinforcement, they will keep doing it over and over again. That yes, it is a way of learning. So how does this work in a classroom though? So you need to start with very specific and clear learning objectives. You teach toward those objectives. When you see desired behaviors, you reinforce them with the hopes that those desired behaviors will increase. Now, there are all kinds of reinforcements you can use, whether it is a good grade on a homework, a pat on the back, kind words of encouragement, stickers on their tests, access to the treasure box, all kinds of things. They do all work, but they are limited. What we have found is reinforcement is much more effective when it comes to classroom management, when it comes to handling student behaviors, like teaching a student to raise their hand and wait to be called on, teaching students to line up and be quiet to walk down the hallway. And as you can see, there are all kinds of reinforcers that you can use. But in behaviorism, students are greatly passive. They are simply sitting there waiting to be reinforced. And when they're reinforced, they repeat what they've just done, just like those cats in the video. And that's not really how we view students in the classroom. Also, the type of learning that occurs from behaviorism is not deep learning, and it also doesn't help the student to be intrinsically driven or motivated to learn. So I love the cartoon down here. So the teacher says, "That's the correct answer, Billy, but I'm afraid you don't win anything for it." Because if your main teaching strategy is behaviorism or operant conditioning, the student always is going to have their hand out waiting for their reward. And they're not necessarily going to be driven to learn because they want to learn. All right, moving forward to a different area of learning theories, we're going to be looking at the cognitive learning theorists, beginning with Jean Piaget. So Jean Piaget, and if you've had a child development course, perhaps an intro to psychology course, you may have already covered him. He believes that learning occurs in 4 distinct stages, and that as we grow, we think qualitatively differently and in more and more advanced ways. So for instance, if we look down here at the bottom, at the sensory motor stage, you have an infant who simply recognizes that they have a drink. The pre-operational stage, they recognize that that drink is water and that water is a liquid. The concrete operational stage, they might be able to judge how much liquid is in a glass and whether there's more or less depending on the shape of the glass. And by the formal operational stage, you can think more theoretically about things like whether a cup is half empty or half full. So again, we think in stages and qualitatively in more advanced ways as we age. As we continue, so Piaget felt that we're all born curious and that this is where learning comes from, that our curiosity drives us to interact with our environment, to want to read books, to want to go outside and explore, to want to learn things. He believed that students are very active in the learning process. In fact, they are creating or constructing their own understandings of things through this process of discovery. Now we have another cognitive learning theorist, Jerome Bruner. He also believed in this idea of discovery learning. That's something they have in common. This idea that children should discover understandings for themselves. So that he believed that our minds take in information from our environment, we code that information, and then we're able to use it in other situations. Well, in more advanced studies of Jean Piaget, I would say he agrees with that. I like this quote by Jerome Bruner. Being able to go beyond the information given to figure things out is one of the few untarnishable joys in life. And I think that's, again, pretty typical for how he viewed learning. So when it comes to Bruner, he believed that teachers should allow students to discover things for themselves. That instead of telling them what the answer is, or showing them what the answer is, they should provide them with the resources and the materials to interact with, and then let students discover things on their own. He also believed in something we call curriculum spiraling. This is the idea that year after year after year, we should spiral through similar topics and keep revisiting them, but cover them in a slightly more advanced way. This is why you don't cover things like fractions just one time. You cover fractions over and over and over again, just in slightly more advanced ways each time. And that also helps to reinforce the concept for deeper learning. Here's a short video on the idea of spiraling curriculums. So I thought that was an interesting way to just take a second look at what this idea of spiraling curriculum is. There are some famous math and science programs that use spiraling. I've got a picture over there on the left of Saxon Math. It is popular among classical schools as well as homeschoolers, and it really focuses on this idea of spiraling math concepts and covering them over and over again to create a deeper learning of them. Okay, so moving on, we now have the social cognitive theorists. So these look at both, if you're a social cognitive theorist, you look at both the idea of your mental processes, which is the cognitive part, just like Piaget did. But then you also look at the role of society, the role of the social world in which you live. So it's not just looking at the individual and what they think, but the individual within their social life, because you really can't tease the two apart. Lev Vygotsky is one of the more famous social cognitive theorists. I like this quote of his: "A mind cannot be independent of culture." He was a Russian philosopher / psychologist who was one of the first to really talk about the importance of looking at culture when looking at learning. And he believed that the way students learn best is through discussion and interaction. So he believed teachers should really have lots of questioning in the classroom, discussions, group projects, and so on. Another famous social cognitivist is Albert Bandura. I like Albert Bandura a lot. He's a very interesting guy. He worked out of, I think maybe Stanford in California. He believed that we learn best by observing others. So we observe others who are serving as role models, and they are modeling or demonstrating what it is we're trying to learn. So we watch someone do something, and then we imitate it. There are a lot of things we learn this way. DIY TV, DIY YouTube videos are based on this. Think of how many times you've wanted to know how to fix something or to make something or do something, and you watch an instructional video, and then you do it. That's social cognitive theory. Now, philosophical perspectives. We are actually going to be covering the majority of this through our homework for this lesson, but I do want to touch upon it to prep you for this homework. There are a lot of different schools of philosophy out there that try to explain epistemology, which is ways of knowing, ways of learning, ways of teaching, and they come into this idea when we're looking at teaching philosophies as well. And when you're looking at different schools of thought when it comes to philosophical approaches to teaching, what you'll find is some are very similar to one another, and some polar opposites. There are a lot of differences here. So they can be distinguished by a lot of things. Are they teacher-centered or are they student-centered? Teacher-centered means that they focus on a formal authority presenting information. Now, that is how most college courses are taught, because students are more advanced by the time they reach college, and studies have shown they actually learn quite well that way. It's based on Chickering's model of student development. The student-centered approach is focused more on the student, and you see this mostly with very early age, with elementary teachers. That's why they do so much more hands-on kinds of things and why they focus more on the student. But another way of looking at this is looking at where the focus should be in the classroom. Okay? So there are a lot of ways of looking at teacher-centered versus student-centered. I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg. You can also look at their educational goals. What do they think the goal of education is? Is it to make careers? Is it to make minds? They can also differ based upon their curriculum. Do they think that curriculum is predetermined and universal? That everyone should be teaching the same thing because all human beings have the same needs? Or should it be greatly individualized and student-led based upon personal interests? Okay, so I have an example of that. I'm in a Facebook group, as you can see, called Secular Homeschooling with Netflix and Other Media. And I saw a mom posting about how she was creating an entire homeschool unit based upon the Amazon Prime TV series, The Umbrella Academy. And so I started reading through this, and you can see how she found that this was a show her kids liked. So her entire curriculum was being driven by her students' interests, which were the Umbrella Academy, and that she is connecting this to writing, she's connecting this to their science classes, and I only included a few of the activities she had listed. That is very much student-led curriculum. Another way these philosophical perspectives can vary is based upon assessment. Do they believe in standardized assessments to allow for comparison across schools and across states, or more informal assessments, or perhaps no assessments at all? So this will be it for the formal content for Chapter 7. You will have a homework that will cover philosophical perspectives and will include a YouTube video. So please make sure you check Blackboard for that. So thank you so much for your attention. I'd like to show that while I've been sitting here, you can see I've got a cat behind me. I seem to always have a cat around when I'm doing videos for you all. So this one's Lily. Hey, Lily. All right. Thank you all, and I'll see you next time.